Good morning. Happy Monday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect. All right. Digging into a very busy Monday. Quick housekeeping item. iFast University members, we have a call today at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're not a member of iFast University and would like to participate in this call, please go to ifastuniversity.com, get yourself signed up, and please join us at 1 p.m. today. Digging into today's Q&A, this is Cameron. Cameron has a really good question. One of the things we have to understand is that no movement takes place without a gradient. So we have to have a differential in our ability to change our shape. So humans are primarily water, so we use compression and expansion to move through space. And if we don't understand how we are compressed or expanded, then we don't understand how we can help people restore their movement capabilities. And so this is why we have to rely on things like understanding archetype and starting conditions. And again, the strategies that people will use that become limiting in regards to movement, so then we can actually help them recapture those movement capabilities. So we talk a great deal in this call about position and how we can apply pressures to promote these shape changes that are so necessary for movement. So thank you, Cameron. Great question. Very helpful for a lot of people. Once again, see you all on IFSU at 1 p.m. today. Everybody have an outstanding Monday. I'll see you tomorrow.
So basically, Alex asked this question a few weeks ago, and then it sort of goes with Jen's question. So I lost a lot of sleep last night thinking about the foldable meat suit. I was thinking about, so let's say like in Jen's picture case, if there's like a narrow, and if I want to, and like whatever activities I give them, they're not particularly working. So I'm trying to like use like manual intervention, start to like shape the ribs and the pelvis to start getting their like an actual turn in on that right side.
Okay.
So I think where I'm at to start with the narrow in that case is like if their ribs are like sort of like they're sort of out like that.
Straight?
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's like you got to put them like on some sort of like helical pattern. So that's where like the standing behind them, sort of trying to like tuck them back in, like try to bring them back.
Uh-huh.
So then once we're there, I'm trying to picture sort of like Jen's picture in that case, where it's like, so like once they get there, and if they still appear where like the right side's down, but clearly they're not, they're just like, it's just multiple twists on a twist on that rib cage. So I was trying to picture like, sort of what do you do next to try to help like to like get some sort of like AP expansion on that right side.
Okay. So you said narrow ISA, right?
Yep.
Okay. Where is the expansion on somebody that is compressed?
Like
So the compression is essentially anterior posterior, correct?
yes.
Okay. So where's the expansion?
Like
Where can you create a gradient?
like at their belly.
Jim Marcello knows. She's going to say it out loud and embarrass you. There you go.
Gotcha. Oh, I'm very embarrassed.
It's sideways, right?
Yeah.
So this is a point of confusion for a lot of people that think that the ISA is an angle measurement, right? They go, well, my angle's 106 degrees, and it's like, okay, so what? You ever have like a narrow ISA, and they're laying on their back, and you're going to do some activity in supine, and they take their first breath in, and then their ribs just literally separate sideways like the Red Sea. You know,
Yeah.
and it looks like they're about 3 inches deep front to back, and then they just go like crazy sideways.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Always confusing. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So air volume is following the path of least resistance. So the AP compression is not going to let them expand front to back, but they can expand sideways. And so this like everything that I talk about in regards to rolling is to affect that capacity to create the gradient. And so where you have to apply the pressure then is into, you're going to take away some of that expansion, and I'm going to try to promote it to move in the other direction. 1 second. Love you. And so this is why you would start somebody in side lying versus supine, because again, if the goal is to influence the gradient, you have to go where the expansion is possible first. Okay, that's how you determine. It's like, what position do I put him in to start? It's like, okay, where can you create gradient?
So say if we put him in like left side lying in this situation, and I'm going to use my hands to like create to create the gradient at that point, to start to shut off that lateral aspect of the rib cage.
Okay.
So like because I know with the wides that they're sort of the caliper situation, so like it's fairly easy to see and feel where you're sort of like tucking their ribs like into their pocket. Type thing. I guess I'm trying to figure out, so it's like once we get some malleability to the not have the ribs be so straight, like in that case, like am I still sort of creating the IR from that side with my hands, like still tucking into the pocket?
All right, so number one, narrow ISA individual, do they have a great middle propulsive phase? No. Okay, so when you take a narrow to side lying, you got to start thinking the bias right away. Okay, so I've got lateral expansion based on the current shape, but I'm going to create a bias to create the turn that you're talking about, like right away. So if I was guiding the rolling, and you've seen me do this, so I'm applying the down force through the pelvis, but I'm also driving the shape of the pelvis and the direction of the short arc roll, because what I am actually trying to do is create that turn from the starting position. Because if I just leave them in middle propulsion, it's not the best place for them to be as a narrow because of the shape of the rib cage, because I have to create the bend in the ribs.
I see. So once you like give them back like a helix of some type rather than being straight, and that's why you'll just like, so put them into side lying, so they're in middle P, which they don't have very much of anyway. And then that's when you'll like, either from sort of the backside of the ribs or the pelvis, or start like bringing them, and so you'll actually just start rolling them to move them towards early P and then the late P on that side, because they got a lot of that.
Yep.
So say once you've got that and they like just still suck at like, and then so say once they get a little bit better at that, but they just like don't really have, like they're still lacking any measurement or shape, or you don't really see that like dorsal rostral expanding. So like if they're narrow, like they're already sort of like over to that right side. So I guess like I just keep like picturing if I were to do like a dorsal rostral like expansion scapular mob on the right, like that would probably just take them, floating them up more to the right where they're at already. Like, can I do that, or does that like?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you're doing the scapular mobilization, what are you doing?
I mean, like I'm trying to create like a yielding or like early P in that case. Like I guess I'm thinking the one where I'm standing in front of them, and like my hands are coming up and over.
Right. No, I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Make sure. Okay.
Yeah. So it's literally the same thing that we were just talking about. So it is a way to be, and again, what you're doing is you're just being a little bit more specific as to where you're going to be promoting the expansion. So you're going to create the delayed representation on that same side that you're manipulating the scapula.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's a short arc roll. You're just driving it. You're fixing the humerus against your chest as you're doing mobilization. You move the scapula into the position that allows the dorsal rostral to expand posteriorly, where you have taken the scapula away from that space. And so then the side closest to the table would be a later representation. The side that you're manipulating is going to be the delayed side.
So then from there, you could actually just like put them in the late on the top part. And like,
yeah, you can close it back down and bring him towards you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. It was much more simple than I thought. Right.
Well, discussion is very simple. Like no one has ever failed on one of these calls before. Everybody is successful on these calls. Come on, Cameron. It's like nobody ever misses. Nobody has to deal with these live humans that have their own thoughts and beliefs and issues, right?
Yeah.
No, it's always hard. It's always hard. But the thing that you want to fall back on as a rule, okay?
Mhm.
So, okay, here you go. Have you done any of the ISA roles?
Yeah, I keep calling them mummy rolls, but yes.
That would be the wrong thing to call them, because that would be absolutely wrong in every way. In every way. No, but you've done them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then there's a difference between how I place my hands,
Mhm.
depending on which side I'm going to be determined by archetype as well, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Why? Why is there a difference?
I mean, well, 'cause it's sort of like the one that's closer, like on your chest, right? And then if you go onto that side, like that would bring.
I'm with you, but it's like, but why does this matter?
I mean, because like at least the way I pictured it is that like if it matters because the helical angle of the wide's got to come like turn on the oblique, and then the narrows can just sort of spin.
Okay, but so it has to do with the
elbow
direction that the pressure is being applied, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, because the elbow's like straight on you if it's
okay. All right. So what I'm doing is I have to say, well, here's where it's expanded. I have to compress that space down so I can expand something else. Right? That's the rule. Okay.
Yeah.
The rule is I have to have a gradient, right? So I can manipulate the volumes and the pressures. Otherwise, nothing happens. Like if you take somebody that walks into your clinic and they've got, here you go. This happened to me this week. 5, 5, 5. And that was hip ER, hip IR, straight leg raise. Okay. 5, 5, and 5. No gradient. Didn't roll him. Okay. Wouldn't matter. It's like rolling a Tootsie Roll across the table. Okay. No change whatsoever. Okay. So that's where you got to lay hands and you got to start creating you literally have to start creating a gradient under that circumstance. So laying somebody on their side to start or doing an ISA roll is the exact same thing. It's just based on where the expansion is for me to allow them to I can't talk this morning, to allow them to manipulate the gradient. Okay.
Okay.
Good morning. Happy Tuesday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect. All right, very busy Tuesday coming up, digging straight into today's Q&A. This is with Robbie, and Robbie had a really cool question about how we perceive things through a bias. And so this comes down to a modeling question. And what we need to make sure is that we have a coherent and useful and effective model. There are different representations of this. So if you use a dead guy anatomy type of a model, then you think in levers and planes and such, whereas a living, breathing, dynamic human being doesn't have those. And so it doesn't mean that that model is not useful at certain times. It just means that it's immediately placing a limitation on what is possible, and therefore you are restricting your capacity to intervene. This is the problem with almost every system that's available out there, is they're making certain assumptions and they're not close enough to the truth or to reality, and therefore they will always fail. And so that's why we need to continue to evolve this representative model. And so we kind of cover some ground in that regard in this question. So thank you, Robbie. Definitely going to be helpful for a lot of people. Everybody have an outstanding Tuesday, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Good morning, sir.
How are you, young man?
I'm well. There's a heat wave here in Ireland, so people were out taking photos of the sun. It's a rare occurrence here.
They ask questions like, what is that in the sky?
Yeah, there's grandparents telling their grandkids, so you don't see this too often, so make sure you take it in.
That's hilarious.
It hurts my eyes, Grandma. Look at it, I said, look at it. It's a pity Zach went off the call there, because you kissed Lisa goodbye, and I was about to say to Zach that he better take a good representation of that when he goes to kiss Lee. He's gone. I don't think they're too complicated, just two, in my mind, quick ones. Is the most common representation we see when people are standing with regards to their feet, late left and early right? It just seems to be the most common one we're seeing most of the time. It isn't. That's okay. That's fair enough. I just wanted to know. It just seems to be a common one I'm seeing.
It may be that you have a biased population. So this is one of the questions that comes up a lot, because if I'm going to pick on you just for a second, Jen. So like, if in Jen's world, she thinks everybody's a baseball player. Yeah. You know why? That's all she sees is baseball players. And that's not all she sees, but she sees so many of them, right? That would be a bias, right? And so you just got to be careful with that, because the day that you think that everybody's the same is the day that you just hit a brick wall and you go, but it worked yesterday, you can't go there. Everybody's going to be moving forward. So from a biomechanical perspective, every compensatory adaptation that we produce will shift the center of gravity forward. Yeah. And then it becomes like defending, right? It's like, I have to control my center of gravity. There's certainly internal force bias that everybody has to manage to varying degrees, right? And so archetype is going to affect that strategy. And so again, it's like, if you've got a biased population, then you're going to see a lot of the same stuff over and over again. But I challenge you to not fall into the trap of saying that everybody's the same.
Yeah, that bias was the exact word coming into my mind, because I suppose just as I'm getting deeper into the model too, just it's almost as if, and maybe it's only the small exposure I've had so far, but it's almost as if the default is someone doesn't know. They just go, oh, late left, early right. It's like, and in my head, I'm like, surely, like, why is it? Maybe it's just in the little sample size I've seen so far. It just seems to be the default that when people don't know, they're really just kind of falling back to that pattern, maybe because of.
What are you going to do, Robbie? What are you going to do? What are you going to do when you see two middle feet?
When I see two middle feet.
Like they're in middle propulsion on both sides.
If they're in mid propulsion,
so that means sides. Their feet look exactly the same. Their feet look exactly the same.
Well, no two feet look the same, but I get what you mean.
Their toes are straight. Their toes are straight. Their toes are straight. Their knees are bent. Okay, they can't straighten their knees. Right.
Yeah.
And their feet look exactly the same.
This is what I do. Do you want to see what I do? I do this. I pick up the phone and I go, Bill.
I see enough of a variety that because I get all the weird stuff. And that's not weird, like they're not weird people. It's just like the stuff that, like yesterday, I had a lady a former college basketball player that blew out her patellar tendon. She had a bunch of scarring. She hasn't been able to straighten her knee for 9 years, right? And we did a little, thingy, and now she can straighten her knee, just because they didn't account for some of the twists and turns. But the foot representation that she had on the right side, so she's like 6'3", and but the foot representation that she had on the right side was a crushed middle propulsive foot, right? Which is not what you would it's not what you would expect based on your question.
Yeah, I'm not saying that that's what I'm seeing all the time. I'm just saying so far it's kind of like it's a bias I think people have. Like in my mind, I'm thinking that can't, like, that's not right. There's no way, like the majority of people are always showing up with that. It just can't be. And I just feel that people are just kind of like, whether it's because they've gone through certain education that says everyone's right, you know what I mean? Well,
but it just may be where they are at the point in time. They just haven't seen enough, right? So and this is one of the issues of learning in the atmosphere in which you learn. If you are consuming information and then just spitting it back out, that's the type of a response that you would make. Yeah. You say, oh, everybody does that. It's like, no, they don't.
No, they don't. Yeah. No, that's all it. I was just making sure that
like it's one of the things that you have to recognize over time is that you just never knew what the options were. Right?
Yeah.
So if I talk about ERs and IRs, okay, to most people, they're going to see turns, right? They're going to see ER turns out, IR turns in. And I would say that ER goes up, IR goes down. Oh, I didn't know that was an option. Yes, it is. But that changes the perspective a little bit now when you start to look at somebody and you say, oh, this has turned out, this has turned in. It's like, wait a minute. If I have a compressive force, guess what? That's the superimposition of internal rotation.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have to account for that. But see, if you never knew that was part of the option that's going to take place during an internal rotation and an external rotation.
Yeah.
It's just accounted for it.
Yeah, it's just their frame of reference is only like.
Well, again, it's like, what is your exposure? Like, how do you relate to the what your findings are to whatever thought process is in your head?
Yeah,
perfect. Right. It's like looking at a straight leg raise and going, oh, you have tight hamstrings. Right. Okay. It's like blaming that, and because that's the classic representation, and so like that's what they'll tell you, and you go to physical therapy school, and it's like that's what they're going to tell you in physical therapy school. It's like, oh, you got right. They're gonna blame a structure, and then you get stuff like, well, I'm just going to static stretch a structure, and then that should help, and then it doesn't help, and then you wonder what's going on.
You mean those people who taught me there's a sagittal and frontal plane? Them liars.
Okay. Dead guys do. My point is, it's like what is the frame of reference of your model? If you're using a dead human being as your representative model, then a lot of that stuff is on the table as far as planes, points in space, levers, like all of those things come back into play in that context.
Yeah.
But if that's your context for a dynamically moving human being, now you have imposed limitations on your process because it doesn't work that way. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. I have NeuroCoffee in hand and it is perfect. All right. Well, today is Wednesday. That means tomorrow's Thursday. That means tomorrow, 6 a.m., coffee and coaches conference call. As usual, grab yourself a cup of coffee. Please join us for some great people, great Q&A, and a great way to start Thursday. Okay, digging into today's Q&A, this is with Manuel. Manuel's question started off as a squat related question in regards to archetype, but it led us into some deeper principles in regards to movement. So we have to consider physical structure. So archetype comes into play. So when I constructed the wide and narrow archetypes, I was giving you a framework to work from that allows you to understand how people may be able to move through space and execute certain activities. This also lends us to the fact that now we have to make better training decisions in that regard. So sometimes we have to adapt the exercise to the individual, as the individual will not be able to adapt to the exercise. Sometimes you can change muscle orientation and gain access to positions and movement, and sometimes you have to change your coaching cues. And so again, these are very useful principles to understand. So we have to understand structure and load and muscle orientation and performance demands to allow us to make the best possible decisions. So again, Manuel, great question. Thank you so much. Everybody have an outstanding Wednesday. I will see you tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., Coffee and Coaches Conference Call.
Yeah, I had a question about squat depth. And so given that wide ISAs, they orient from the bottom up and narrows from the top down. I was thinking about strategies to when these individuals have a hard time getting past the sticking point, they can't hit a deep squat. So, I was thinking, do you think it would be better for like a wide ISA to do something where you unweight them, like maybe hold on to a cable or whatever, so that they start from the bottom up to try to access the space, whereas with a narrow, you could do something like I don't know, like a Zercher squat on a ramp or something. You're starting from the top down and building it that way, or would it,
No, your instinct is really good. But let's talk about this a little bit as to why. Okay, so when somebody descends into a squat, why do they stop?
They run out of space.
Yeah, it's kind of like we've been talking about throughout this call. It's like there's just no more gradient, right? So there's no more expansion in the direction that they're trying to move. And so this is why, like, in everybody's seen this to some degree. They say, hey, let me see your squat, and they squat down, and then their butt goes backwards and their head goes forwards, right? And they look like a downhill skier, right? Their chest is kind of on their thighs, their butt's going straight back, and they're reaching forward, and they think that they're doing a great deep squat. And then we just kind of, do the internal head shake thing that they can't see. And then you kind of know, right? So the reason that they're doing that though and the reason that they're following that shape is because they're just following the expansion, right? You said go down as far as you can. And so they're trying to go down as far as they can, but now they're literally hitting the floor, so to speak, and then they spread out front to back, which is head to tail, right? Okay. So if you have somebody that is descending and stops, that's just the point of compression. That's just where they no longer have a gradient. If you can change the context of the activity and prolong their ability to maintain the gradient, you've just increased the depth of the squat. Mm-hmm. So strategy wise, I would be on board with that, right? Execution then becomes a bit of a problem, because then that's where the experiment takes place as to, okay, what do I have available? What kind of a structure am I dealing with here? When you've got somebody that's AP compressed, you've got a lot of ER orientation to deal with there, so you might have to put them in that space. But, from a strategy standpoint, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, because, my goal with either of those two movements was to create the expansion for them to access the space in the beginning.
Yep.
In the first place. And so then, I've had success with a ramp squat, but I was trying to be a little bit more targeted and think, okay, what if I could start from the bottom up for some people and top down for others? So
no, it's like I won't disagree. And again, your narrow ISAs, because they're designed to be better squatters in the first place, they tend to do really, really well with those squat strategies that are biased towards like capturing the early. because like I said, they're just pre-designed to be better at it. Right? With your, and with your wides, and this is why I like, the box squat variations, is because it's a little bit easier to work them off of the sticking point, like just above or just below, right? And it allows them to promote the yield as well, which is what a lot of times they just can't do at all.
And since we're trying to increase relative motion, we're trying to increase access to a space, is it, I guess, how far would you want to, I guess, restrict the motion? For example, like, having your feet pointing straight ahead versus something that's kind of a little bit, toed out more, as in their normal squat.
Yeah, this is going to come down to like intention.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had an Olympic weightlifter,
Or wannabe.
I don't know if you've ever worked with them before, but
I
okay.
Once in a while.
So you think of the scenario of, okay, you literally have to access this vertical position. So like there's a depth that they better be able to reach, right? So they can get under the bar. Under that circumstance, it's like you can't force somebody into a position that they do not have access to. So hip structure becomes a bit of a problem, right? Orientation becomes part of the problem. And under that circumstance, it's like there's going to be toe out. There's going to be ER orientation, right? So I can superimpose the IR. That's going to be pure execution. So you have to take that into account. Just like if you were teaching them the lifts, it's like, what is your expectation to reacquire movement? It's like you're going to have to make those accommodations too, right? It's just to whatever degree within that context, right? Because performance shows you the great limitation, right? I mean, it's like there, you know that you're going to have lifters that will never be able to squat with anything that doesn't have like a massive amount of toe out, because again, they're trying to acquire a position with a very, very specific physical structure that will not allow certain things to happen, right? And then the greater your capacity to access the ideal puts you on the Olympic team versus just being a guy that likes to do the lifts.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So you build your intention in, and you say, okay, I'm going to compare you to the ideal, so I understand what you're doing, and then we will try to move you in that direction to whatever capacity you have without inflicting any unnecessary consequences.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Happy Thursday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand, and it is perfect.
But today I wanted to ask about doing a supine cross connect, but for people who can't achieve the foot contacts, the medial contacts, and they don't have the option to get manual intervention from from a therapist, and they're working on their own. Do you have any ideas for changing the actual foot contact with the wall? Like, for example, putting a slant block on the wall or something like that, or putting something underneath the first metatarsal head, something that could be done without manual intervention from a second person.
You don't want to do that because you're going to
in order to learn those contacts.
Yeah, you don't want to do that to the foot, because you're going to promote the wrong shape, and you're going to perpetuate the ER orientation. Okay. So much better strategy. Number one, you want to try to determine why you're not getting the foot contacts. And so what you might have is somebody that is oriented significantly into external rotation. And so that would need to be addressed first. If it's a proximal to distal superimposition of the ER, very much like we talked with Alex in regards to the mandible, we'll see the same representation in the hip. You need to address that shape first. So that might require something done in sideline, perhaps, that's going to give you some lateral compression. So you gain the anterior posterior expansion back, which will allow you to capture those medial foot contacts without compensation. Okay. Now, having said that, there are other strategies that can reduce the concentric orientation in the foot itself that are interfering with the capability of capturing medial foot contacts. And so that would be associated with the concentric muscle activity on the bottom of the foot. And so you fall back on, if you're not somebody that uses hands-on type of treatments, then speaking of the devil, like I got a guy coming on that's a strength coach that doesn't do manual therapy, but he does manual therapy. In that case, that's like your lacrosse ball, your something that you're rolling with your foot to help reduce some of the concentric orientation on the bottom of the foot. And then that may allow you to access those medial foot contacts. If that doesn't work, there's some banded mobilizations that you can utilize that are going to help promote the bony influence that you're looking for. But that's a little bit beyond the scope of this call because it's very difficult to visualize. But there are strategies that will allow you to access those foot contacts. But the first thing that you need to identify is why you're not getting the foot contacts in the first place. If you try to accommodate the foot to the wall, all you're going to do is promote the wrong shape in the foot, because that's the idea behind the exercise. Okay.
Thank you. That's actually very helpful.
Good. Okay. I tried to cover all bases there.
Hey, you did great. Thank you.
Okay. I didn't want to leave you hanging. Good morning. Happy Friday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect. All right. For those of you on the 2-week sprint, this is your review and reflection weekend. Make sure that your behaviors are in line with your intentions and you are making progress towards all of those major projects that you have in mind. Digging into today's Q&A, this is with Zach. This is a really cool situation. So Zach is working with an athlete, had a very short period of time to diagnose and treat to try to get an outcome, and did a great job, actually made a significant impact on this athlete's symptoms to such a degree that the athlete felt like he could practice. So this was really exciting. The cool part about this, though, is now you have to look back and you have to say, okay, what did I see? What happened? What was my intention? And so these are really important questions to ask under all circumstances. We tend to only ask ourselves questions when we fail miserably. But when we're successful, we have to look back and we have to ask the same questions. So this is the importance of having starting conditions. So this is one of the reasons why when I constructed the archetypes for the wide and the narrow ISAs, the reason those exist is because they give us an effective starting point. So when we do evaluate someone or we assess them and we determine where they are, what their needs may be, we have the comparator of the foundational archetype, because that's how we're going to work back and reverse engineer these processes to restore whatever relative motions they may need or whatever performance quality they need to develop. And so, like I said, the important thing is to keep asking those questions even when you're successful. It's like, what did I see? What could I have done differently? It's a very powerful question that you should always be asking. So Zach, thank you so much for this question. It's a great way to understand this process of how we get better. So again, thank you. Podcast will be up on Sunday. Everybody have an outstanding weekend, and I will see you next week. Onward.
All right. So I had a question, just trying to get a better understanding of how energy is traveling through the system, with respect to waves. And I guess I'll give a little bit of context of why I started thinking about this, which might help answer. There's a football kid that I literally had 5 minutes with him before he had to go out to practice. But he came in with lateral hip pain and medial knee pain. The knee pain more so with just doing even a single leg kind of mini squat type motion, and then the lateral hip pain. So if he's going into a change of direction into the left side back out to the right. Pain's on the right side. Sorry. He would
Well,
get,
okay, wait. So he's going like into a cut on the left foot, and he gets right hip.
yeah,
pick?
like if this is
Nope, I got it. I'm with you.
this way and out.
And it's right hip though, but he fills
Yeah,
in the.
as he crosses over with the penultimate step.
Okay. Oh, he's doing so it's at the crossover, or it's the positioning step.
No, it's like as he's going into it, it's the penultimate step as the right foot comes across his body to like start the breaking impulse.
I got you. Okay.
And then left
I'm
foot's
with you.
fine as he comes
I'm
out.
with you.
So just like throwing him on the table had like a massive ER orientation
And there you go.
on the right side.
Yep. Yep.
And then like the same twist at the knee.
Yep.
So just really quick, basically just like laid on his pelvis and then manually untwisted the knee. Knee pain gone, hip pain like greatly reduced to the point that he felt like he could practice.
Brilliant. Nice work.
Thank you.
Well, but hey, dude, like don't discount that. It's like you did an amazing thing in a very short period of time because of your reasoning. That's great. I love it.
I'm trying to understand a little better, like how I influenced the way that he was able to accept force from the ground up and then put it back down.
Okay, so hang on. This is real simple. This is like crazy simple, dude. Come on. Look at the orientation that you started in. Okay. If he was just taking a straight old step forward with the right leg, okay, you've got energy that's coming up from the ground through the right foot into the lower extremity towards the hip. Where's it landing? Like it's following it. So look straight down through the femur, okay, straight down, like from above in your head. Look straight down through the femur. And then straight down through the tibia. Do you see the corkscrew?
Kinda. Is this something you could potentially draw, or is that not?
You're really asking a lot from my artistic talents here. You have an ER to IR situation. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what you got. Okay. So if you're looking like literally straight down through the hip socket, down through the femur, straight into the ground and into the foot from above. You've got a curve that goes like this, and you got another curve that goes like that.
Yes.
Okay. So you made a proximal change that reduced the compressive strategy that he had at the hip. So you compressed the pelvis, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So he's got an ER representation or an ER orientation at the proximal hip that you took away. All right. So that reduces the need for the anti-orientation. You gave him true IR. You gave him like instead of an anti-orientation for IR, you gave him relative motion IR. So he was superimposing. He was now capable of superimposing the IR on the ER. Okay.
Yep.
You untwist the knee, right? You reduce the load on the medial aspect of the knee as he is starting to try to load that foot with the crossover into the cut.
Yeah, I think I see that.
So you gave him legit IRs when he needed higher force production into the ground versus orientation and downward compression through the bones themselves. So the hip was a compressive strategy that is magnified. The knee was a compressive strategy that was magnified by the forces of the cut. You gave him the capacity to distribute load by restoring relative motions in the knee.
All right, that's helpful.
Do you understand?
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. So again, where you were applying pressure through the hip and the pelvis literally changed the shape that reduces the need for the anterior orientation. So all of that concentric orientation that you had that was compressing the femur into IR, gone. Well, mostly gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was interesting because his athletic trainer had looked at him the day before, and I just kind of like asked him like, all right, like, what did you see? Because they said like, can you just like look at him really quick before he tries to go out and practice? And it was like one of those things where like you always talk about like being able to speak both languages. Because like from the athletic training standpoint, he saw like what he called an out flare on the right side.
Yeah.
And tried to do like a muscle energy technique that wasn't effective from like when he remeasured, didn't do anything to the symptoms. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like that makes sense. Like out flare, ER orientation. But I guess it's just having like a little bit of a different solution. So there's like one of those moments where like it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like after a while, it does start to make sense, right? Yeah. See, there you go.
All right, cool.
Is that it?
Yeah, that helps.
All right. Well, that's awesome. I love that story. Yeah. Don't forget that.